Portland, Oregon, June 30th, 2018. The Patriot Prayer Group was holding a rally, and protesters appeared, the Black Bloc, Antifa, to counter-protest the rally. So we start here, before any actual physical violence had begun, and you can see the people in black masks throwing rocks and whatever it is they're throwing, and into the crowd of the Patriot Prayer with the U.S. flags. And somebody throws some kind of an explosive. There it is, a big one, and that's when the actual physical confrontation begins. And here you see it. So this is the way Antifa works. They've shut down several rallies around the country by doing this. They find out about a rally by any right-wing group, whether it's these people or any free speech rally or alt-right, which they consider to be neo-Nazi. They consider everybody to be a neo-Nazi practically. And they go in there and start fights, and then it turns into a brawl, and then the police shut it down. This is what is known as heckler's veto, and it's illegal. And the people who do it should be arrested and removed from the area and let the rally or the march or whatever it is continue. But no, the police shut down the thing because they let it turn into a riot. This is what happened in Charlottesville too, and this is what happened in Berkeley when Milo Yiannopoulos was trying to speak there. This is mob rule, and it must be stopped or else we are in for possible civil war. This is another camera angle from the beginning where the Antifa people are throwing stuff into the Patriot Prayer crowd and the confrontation begins. Now, much of the mainstream press tries to show this as just a riot or a brawl, with both sides being equally the aggressors. This is very far from the truth, as you have seen in the videos. Here are a few examples of how this event has been covered in mainstream press. These are from The Guardian, these headlines and some clips. You notice they say far right many times when describing the Patriot Prayer Group, but they never say far left when they describe Antifa. And there you can see where it says Patriot Prayer supporters, many of whom wore the colors of a right-wing fraternity called Proud Boys, were seen hitting counter-protesters with flagpoles, trash can lids, and their fists. They failed to mention that before this started, Antifa were throwing rocks, bottles, and explosives into the crowd of Patriot Prayer rally people. And again, one Proud Boy was seen to floor an anti-fascist protester with a single punch. Later in the day, he was seen being cuffed by police officers. Again, they failed to mention that the guy who floored the protester with a single punch was being attacked by him with a steel pipe. He was just defending himself. He was cuffed by police officers, but later released when they reviewed the video. Counter-protesters, some clad in Black Bloc clothing and masks, released deafening fireworks and punched back at Patriot Prayer supporters. Again, making it sound as though the Patriot Prayer supporters were the initial aggressors and that the counter-protesters were merely defending themselves. Totally reverse of that is true. In a statement, Portland Police's Deputy Chief Bob Day said, "Portland Police planned for today's protests so that people could exercise their First Amendment rights to speech and assembly. However, once projectiles such as fireworks, eggs, rocks, and bottles, and construction equipment were thrown and people were injured, we ordered people to disperse." It doesn't mention, of course, that Antifa were the ones throwing the eggs, rocks, and bottles and construction equipment at the Patriot Prayer Group. It just says that they were thrown. KOIN TV station in Portland, Oregon, says this: Portland police called the gathering a riot after officers observed assaults and other criminal behavior during a Patriot Prayer march downtown on Saturday. They said failure to leave the area could result in arrests. Patriot Prayer had a permit for a Freedom and Courage rally and march, but police revoked that permit when the groups began to clash shortly after the march started around 6 p.m. Again, no blame is assigned. It doesn't say who the aggressor is. People were lighting firecrackers and smoke bombs and throwing eggs and water bottles into the crowd. It doesn't say that the Antifa people were lighting firecrackers and throwing smoke bombs and eggs and water bottles into the Patriot Prayer crowd. It just says people. See, again, they don't want to make the Antifa people look like the aggressors. The article also notes that 4 people were arrested during the events on Saturday, and it lists them, but if you notice, every single one of them was arrested on charges stemming from earlier protests. No arrests were made for any criminal activity that happened today, except for the one guy that knocked the Antifa guy out. He was arrested but later released. All this and no arrests in connection with today's event. NPR, which would predictably have a left-wing slant on it, yes, it does. Here's the headline they have. Police declare a riot after far-right and Antifa groups clash in Portland, Oregon. Supporters of Patriot Prayer, led by its incendiary leader, Joey Gibson, who is also running for a U.S. Senate seat in Washington State, began to assemble in parks along 3rd Avenue in downtown Portland early Saturday afternoon. Far-left Antifa protesters congregated in similar or greater numbers nearby. Well, at least they're calling the Antifa far-left. You don't see that too often. The two groups lobbed insults at each other across a heavy law enforcement presence, clad in riot gear, there to keep the two sides apart and screen for weapons. Well, they didn't keep them apart for very long. Around 6 p.m. local time, Patriot Prayer initiated its permitted march, working its way along 3rd Avenue, but projectiles quickly began flying. Antifa was the one throwing the projectiles, but it doesn't say that, does it? Police then canceled the permit, used bullhorns to declare the situation a riot, and deployed flashbangs and rubber bullets to disperse the crowds. And of course they have to get their little Southern Poverty Law Center opinion in there. The fact that they said that Patriot Prayer had trolled the Northwest with a series of rallies designed to provoke violence. Absolutely untrue. Violence was entirely provoked by the leftists. In a completely unrelated story, they have to add in here at the end, separate families belong together protests decrying the Trump administration's now rescinded policy of separating families at the border erupted in cities around the country Saturday. Another part of downtown Portland played host to one such rally on Saturday. Why they have to put that in there in a story about today's Patriot Prayer rally, well, you know why. Now from the Oregonian. Portland police declared a riot Saturday after tensions between the right-wing Patriot Prayer group and local anti-fascist activists came to a head and broke out in violence. The afternoon began with a permitted rally at Terry Shrunk Federal Plaza, organized by Joey Gibson, U.S. Senate candidate for Washington and a leader of the right-wing Vancouver-based group. A counter-demonstration by masked local anti-fascist groups gathered nearby among a heavy police presence. Officers seized weapons such as utility knives, clubs, and chemical sprays, detaining several protesters early on. A little bit of objective reporting here. How about it? Anti-fascist counter-demonstrators immediately began lobbing eggs, half-empty water bottles, and firecrackers at the conservative marchers, prompting federal police to fire paintballs filled with pepper spray into the crowd. Things turned ugly shortly after 6 p.m. when Patriot Prayer protesters spilled into 3rd Avenue to begin their permitted march through the streets of Portland. Portland police said 4 people were struck by the projectiles and had to be taken to the hospital. An officer was also struck and taken to the hospital. And still no arrests for today's events. Unbelievable. Now, Willamette Week is a leftist rag that comes out of Portland. You can expect very slanted coverage from them, and of course, here it is. Portland police declare a riot after right-wing marchers begin beating anti-fascists with flagpoles. Yeah, that's about as far from the truth as you can get. No point in going into that story.
traffic control devices.
Yeah, let's do it. Don't give it. Hey, don't give it to the Nazis. Why are you so angry? Fuck you, bitch! Get the fuck down!
So you've seen the video, and you've seen some of the media coverage, and you can see how divergent they are. The left-wing bias of the media is readily apparent. We have to shine a light of truth on these events and let people know what really goes on, because obviously the media has an agenda and it has no qualms about twisting and omitting facts to promote that agenda. In the description below I'm going to link to a few other videos taken at the scene there of the riots, and you can judge for yourself as to who the aggressor was. Okay, thanks for watching. Enjoy the videos in the description there, and stay tuned to alternative media for a more accurate version of what happens in our country and in the world. Till next time, stay well and keep on asking why.